Welcome out everyone to this webinar. My name is Thiago. I am a customer success manager here at TagoIO. Today, we're going to have a webinar at MQTT. We're going to cover how to publish and subscribe to MQTT channels, how to parse payload, and more. Vitor will be presenting the webinar with us today. Remembering there is a chat. If you want to present yourselves, please feel free to do so. There's going to be a Q&A on the end of this session. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to ask. And I'm gonna be passing over to Vitor.
Hello, you all. So I am Vitor Lima. So I work with applications and TagoIO. And in this webinar, we will talk a little about MQTT, some basics about how MQTT works, and of course, how to integrate MQTT with TagoIO. So talking a little bit about MQTT, here on Tago, we do have a documentation regarding how MQTT works. How do I open this a new page? Don't remember. Okay, here. So basically, the MQTT is just a protocol that you use to communicate your device with the cloud or other services. And the way it works is by using architecture of topics and publish and subscribe. So when you send data to a topic, and topic is just a channel that you use to name your route of communication, right? So when you publish it to a topic, this message is sent to a broker, and broker is nothing less than a server on Tago side. And after you publish, you can take some actions like triggering an analysis on Tago, or just storing this information in your device. And we will see how this works in a practical way a little bit later in this webinar. And subscribing is actually just listening to the channel and receiving any message that is published to a given topic, okay? So regarding the connection, so in our documentation here at Tago, we do have the hosts, the TCP IP port without SSL and with SSL. And the SSL is just an encryptation that you need to use with a certification. In this webinar, I will not be using SSL, but I will show how it works a little bit later. And when connecting to our broker, you'll need to enter a username and a password. So here we have the instruction that you need to enter token for the username and get the device token from your device at Tago and use it as a password. Another great feature that the MQTT has, just talking about a little bit about the basics of how MQTT works, is the QoS. So when you publish, let me open here a documentation from IBM. You do have the option to set up QoS. So QoS is just a security way to know that your message, your published message was delivered to our broker. And you can choose between 0, 1, and 2 for QoS. And the QoS 0 just means that you publish your message and does not care if the broker receive it or confirm it that it receives or not. The QoS 1 actually will make sure that the server or any other device that is receiving that published message actually receive it. So this works by you sending the message and the broker or any other device responding that he received a message. Only then the message is carded from the server. And the QoS2 is a most lowest way to do that, and it actually only deletes the message after the message was received and processed. So TagoIO supports all these MQTT QoS messages, and you choose which one is best for you. Also take in mind that for the sensor, as higher the QoS, more network and more process is used on the sensor side. But for Tago, I always recommend to use QoS 1, unless you cannot implement QoS 1 on your sensor, of course. Another great feature is the last real message. So what the last real message do is that when your device suddenly disconnects from the broker, it actually publishes a message. The broker do it by themselves. It publishes a message to a channel saying that the device disconnected in an unusual way. So here I have the MQTT.org. And if you do have questions how MQTT work, the basic concepts, I do recommend using this site. If you want to implement your own MQTT protocol, you can get this documentation here. Or if you only want to understand how MQTT works, you can check the MQTT essentials for QoS, last real message, etc. Very important to know what you can do with MQTT and what is available to you, so you can take the best decisions. Now, talking about TagoIO and MQTT. So on Tago, the first thing you want to do when you want to do your first integration with MQTT is to create your device at Tago. We'll use these connections later. I will use MQTT FX to show you an example of connecting to Tago. But let's start by creating our device. So here in my account, I go to devices, add a device. And I do have this custom MQTT. So as any custom in the name of the connector here, it means this connector will not have any payload parser and will not try to decode what you are sending. And we will use this one for our first device. We do have the option here to select the payload type. You can test what works best for you. I usually use auto parser, but if you plan to send a hex string or a buffer, I do recommend using the other one. So I'm creating my device, finish, and I go to my devices page where I can copy the token. So this is done regarding what you need to do on Tago side for starting to see your device connecting. So let me get here the instructions on how to connect. And to connect my device, I actually will use MQTT FX. This will allow me to emulate a device here on my computer. But the principles here are the same for your sensor. So I click on this engine here. I need to enter my broker address. So it's mqtt.tago.io that is available here. Also my TCP IP port, 1883. If I do want to use SSL or TLS, that would be port 883. I need to enable this and select a certificate here for SSL, but this is a completely different subject, so I will not go over here. And for username, we want to use token. It does not matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. And for password, I need to copy my token and go to the MQTFX and paste my token for the password. Then I press OK. So even before I try to press connect here, what I want to do on Tago side is to go to my Live Inspector and press this play button. So Live Inspector allows me to see any kind of requests made to my device. So if I'm pulling data, if I'm sending data, or if I am connecting to MQTT, disconnecting, etc., all of these steps will show up here. So I go back to MQTFX and press connect. I just refresh this page here, make sure I'm connected to the real time. And I'll try again. Okay, so I press disconnect. So it shows that a device, it doesn't know which device it is connected. So I can go back here and press connect, and I can see I actually received a connection. Also, I have the client ID here. So if you use this field, it's available for when you set up any connection with MQTT, it will show up here. And my last real message here, it's set to false because I did not set up any last real message. So connected, I am able to publish to a topic. As I mentioned, that is just like a channel. So I can, for example, say this is channel data because I'll be sending any data for this channel. And I can, for example, use 0101 to publish. Then I can see the device actually received a publish here on Tago. So this is just communication. Nothing is being done to this information yet. It's not being stored. I will not show up in a dashboard. There's no actions to trigger notifications, anything. You are just seeing that you received a publish and you are doing nothing with this information. So from here, when you reach this step where you already have your device connecting and publishing, is when you start to work on Tago side to actually translate this data and take your decision if you want to store or do something else with this information. So the first step you want to do here is to create an action. So the action is just triggers that you set up when something happens on your account. It can be, for example, when a variable is received, when you have users being created, devices being created, etc. And in this case, we want to create an action for MQTT, and I'll call this store MQTT data. And I will select the type of action, insert to device bucket. I'll create my action. And now I have some other fields I need to fill up. First one is to select which device this action will actually support. So I can select the device. I use the multiple devices options to select all the devices with given tag key and tag value. Let's get back and select single device just to be easy. And the topic I want to subscribe, so any message that is received to data topic, the same I'm using here, will be tried to insert to device bucket. So I'll press save. And now we can go back to our device and see in the Live Inspector what's happening. Go to my Live Inspector here, press play. Now I can send my data. And I actually can see that I received a publish. The raw payload, now that I have my action, it actually was converted to a JSON, and is a JSON that TagoIO can accept. That means it has a variable with a variable payload, a value that is exactly the text that I sent in my publish message, and I meet metadata here that contains my MQTT topic parameter. So I can use it on an analysis to know which topic I use it for this information, for this publish. And I actually can see here that one data was accepted and added that to my device. So this is one way to send data. You can actually send this format here if you want to have, if you don't want to do any kind of decoder on Tago, don't want to do anything too complicated. So I can actually write here temperature. I can enter my value here as, for example, 32. I can delete the MQTT topic if I don't want to. If I don't want in the message, and I can publish. And what happens now is that I actually have variable temperature, value 32, and the metadata just filled up automatically, even that I do not send this information. And as always in the live inspector, you can see what was sent in the raw message before any kind of auto parsing being run in your published message. So this is very basic, ready to basically ready to go configuration. Now this is not available for all integrations. Sometimes integration need to send in a different format, or it can only send hexadecimal, or can only send in CSV, or it's much more easier to send on CSV format. When that happens, what you want to do is actually to activate your payload parser. So when I go to payload parser and enable it, I already have starting code here that tells me how to ignore some variables, very useful for other kind of integrations, not so much for MQTT. And when I load the snippets here, I do have some examples for MQTT. So I have a parse example for MQTT hexadecimal and for example for MQTT CSV. So let me load the hexadecimal example. Okay, so now we have the code here. As you can see, you do have some documentations in code that is good to read before you start changing anything. And we do have another webinar explaining exactly how payload parser works and the best way to set up for your device. But just talking a little bit about the basics, you do have this payload parameter here from your payload parser. It's always available. And the content of this parameter, as you can see here, I can set the content to anything I want. The content is actually what will be stored after this code runs. And this code runs for anything that is inserted to your device. Every time you try to insert a variable, this code will run before the variable is really added to your device. And of course, the content of the payload must be a JSON format like this one, in a format that TagoIO accepts. And just in case, if you don't know the format, you can get from our documentation, sending data. You do have information on each one of the parameters. You have some examples. Very quickly
Victor,
to understand. Go ahead.
quick question. Can I send data as a CSV instead of JSON?
Yeah, sure. I'm talking about the hexadecimal here first. I will go to CSV a little bit after that, just for a demonstration. You don't mind to wait, right?
No worries.
Okay. So in the MQTT payload, so if I send as a hex, for example, 0101 here, actually I can get this example from the example in the code for using the emulator. So let me copy this one and publish from here. So actually, every time a variable payload is sent to my device and contains the MQTT topic, so we make sure that the data we are trying to store is from the MQTT, not from a dashboard or the emulator or something else you are using to send data. This is why I have this comparison in this if here. We will convert the value. So we get the parameter value from the variable payload and convert it to a buffer. And the buffer is just an array with each decimal position here. And you can use some buffer functions to actually read the position you want. So in this case, I'm reading 8 bits from the first byte. And on our community, you can see all the instructions on how buffer is used inside Tago. And once you understand, it becomes very easy to make payload parser from hexadecimals. So I have this section here working with hexadecimals and bytes. Really good to take a look and understand how this works if you are not familiar with yet. And once we transform to buffer, we create our array with JSONs from the format that Tago expects to receive. And we converted the payload to this new JSON we created. So if I save this, go back to my live inspector and publish the data, we can see that I only send the hexadecimal and I actually receive 4 variables on my device containing humidity, temperature, protocol version, and payload. All this you can see in the payload parser. So I have the protocol version, temperature, and humidity. Okay. So answering the question that Thiago gives me about the CSV, we do have the parse example for CSV here. I'll just load. As the same as the parser I just showed you, we do have an example here if you want to just test. I will press save. It worked basically the same. We expect to receive the variable payload with the MQTT topic in the metadata. We check if this was really received. Then we use the split method. So we can split the information we received based on the comma. So the value of the splitted value will be an array like this one. And then we can just access the array index and get the values we want. And of course, you can use a more intelligent way to do that if you have different CSV length. But this is just a basic introduction on how this would work. So I press save. I go back to my device, to MQTT-FX and publish the data. If I go to Live Inspector, I should be able to see here temperature and humidity. I can see the raw payload, what was sent, and actually what it was transformed after I did run the payload parser. So I believe this covers all the uplinks introduction that I have for MQTT and the payload parser. And uplink, of course, should be a very quick thing to do. But in some cases, we do have the downlinks when we want to communicate data to our device. And downlinks, we actually need to use or actions or an analysis to do that. So doing an example with action, we can create here an action, and we can use any kind of type of trigger. So we can trigger this action in order to publish to our devices from a variable. And you want to use variable if you have an analysis sending data to a device or a resource where you trigger this action when a device is created or a user or something. You can schedule to send every week, for example, or even when you receive a data from MQTT topic, you can publish it back if you want to. So using action, I will enter a name here and select type of action actually to be published to MQTT topic. So here we have some configurations. We can use QoS 0, 1, or 2. Let's say I want to use QoS 0 just to be quick here. We have the retain option, and retain option means every time any sensor subscribe to the topic, it will receive again this message, unless you retain a different message, because you can only retain one message by topic. Here we're actually searching for buckets because TagoIO implemented MQTT connections actually through the buckets. So you can have more than one device connected to the same bucket if you want to, but this is a very old support integration. I do not recommend to have different devices to the same buckets today, but it is an option if you are in a situation where you need to communicate communication between your sensors. But the best way to do that, if you want to communicate between your sensors and not only to Tago, is to create an analysis to do this communication for you, I think. But at the end, it's up to you. So I will select the first MQTT device. So I will publish to this device in the topic, for example, downlink. And the payload I want to send, for example, I want to send 0505. So I actually did not select the type of trigger I want here. So I want from a variable. And I can create my action. So since I selected my trigger by variable, I will select my device here, and now I need to select a variable. So for example, I want to select a downlink variable. Okay, I will put downlink var here, and when anything is sent to downlink var, I will publish 0505 to my sensor. I will press save, and now I can go back to my device, and I will actually use the emulator here to exemplify this. So I can write here downlink var, that is my variable. I'll send 7 to 1, but this value will be completely ignored because I'm sending 0505. And on my device, I need to be subscribed to the same topic. So the topic I entered on my action was downlink. So I need to make sure my device here is subscribed to that topic, so the device will be able to receive that message. So when I send the payload, I should receive now 0505 to my device. And when you use variables to trigger something on the action, we do have some text that we can use here to make this more dynamically. So for example, I can send the value of my variable in the payload. And if I save that, and for example, I write here 1010, 1010 and send, this is actually the value 1010 that I receive on my downlink message. So this is doing from the action. And of course, it does have some downsides. For example, you need to select devices or select multiple devices here, and you can only publish to a specific device. You cannot publish it to, for example, the same device that triggered this action. That is a very common use case on Tago. So when you want to do a more complex downlink or just a more complex kind of integration with your device, what you actually want to do is run an analysis, and then you go to code, and in the code you are free to do anything you want, right? At least this is the expectation. So
Quick question, Victor, on the downlink, can I publish it from a dashboard?
yeah, for sure. So using analysis, you can actually do that as well. Of course, just by using action, if you create a dashboard that sends this variable to the device, and using the same configuration I had before to publish it to MQTT, it would already work. But actually using analysis is a better way to do that. So let me enter my analysis here or create a new one. So I can create a new one. I would do that in Node.js. And I can select a starting code here, push to MQTT from dashboard. Oh, we do have a snippet for our dashboard. So I'll create my analysis. And in the analysis, we do have documentation as well. Just taking a look. Okay. So we have some documentations on how this works, what is expected, and how to use. So we do have another webinar regarding how analysis works. I do recommend you to watch if you do not know exactly how this code works. And basically, analysis is a code in Node.js that run in a predetermined way that you set up using actions and dashboards. And they actually have some parameters like context and scope. And scope is actually anything that triggered this analysis. So you can have here in the scope a variable or a device information if you are using a resource action. So in this case, we use a scope as a variable because we want to use from a dashboard. And the dashboard will actually add a variable to your device. And this variable will trigger this action here, or will trigger this analysis here. And the variable you want to have in our dashboard is push payload. And down below here, we have some configurations. So for example, every time I click that click a button with the variable push payload, I want to get the last temperature from my data. Actually, I am sending temperature here and just sending the value from the dashboard. Okay, let's do that. So what actually I want to do is to create a dashboard here to use with this analysis. And I want to create my widget. Let me go back to the analysis so I can see the documentation. So I want the push payload. And I can create here an input form. Enter my field here. I want the first MQTT device, variable push payload. So when you enter a variable here for widgets that do not exist in the device, you will see this alert. But it's not a problem, it's just letting you know that this variable do not exist. So do not expect to see any existing value for your field. So I want this to be a text, no problem. Options, I can disable this. Just put a good title here. And a question, so we know what we are doing. And for the submit here, if I click on the button, I can actually set it to run an analysis. But of course, it's the same that going here on the action and entering publish push payload and select to run analysis. So you can do in both ways. I do believe that selecting here from the widget is easier than creating the actions. So I will do from the dashboard here. So every time I click the submit, it will trigger my analysis downlink to MQTT. And I can disable this send to bucket if I do not want to store the push payload variable, but I will let it here just so we can see in the live spectre. So going back to my analysis here, just to make sure we have the correct topic. So I want to change the topic here to downlink, save. And what we will be sending is this object. So temperature Celsius, my data dot value. Let's remove this because I want to see exactly the value I am writing in the farm field in the dashboard. I have some options here, like if I want to retain, if I want to change the QoS. So I've pressed save, and we have some code here to use the MQTT service from Tago and publish it to MQTT service. And now going back here, let's write 12 and submit. We consider our analysis were to run, and we receive message send. That is a response from the MQTT publish function. And if I go back here, we actually receive the object we created. But of course, you don't need to send an object like this. It's just an example. You can, for sure, just send the data.value. That is what you entered in the dashboard. Press save. And now if I press submit here, we should see only 12. Yeah, 12. So you can play around and create any kind of information you want to downlink to your device using this analysis. And from here, you can, of course, combine with other analysis. You can see, for example, a snippet for get device list. And just an example, you can get all your devices and send up and publish a message to all your devices just by running this analysis once. It's coding, so it's up to you what you want to do. So last topic I have here is about other kind of things we usually do with MQTT. So when you integrate, for example, Node-RED to Tago, or you try to integrate a gateway that have several sensors, usually the gateway will have only one MQTT connection and not being able to have several MQTT connections. You will need actually to split, because if this is your case, what will happen is that you have one device with several sensors being stored to the same device. And if you had been using Tago for a while, you will understand that Tagos work better if you have sensors separated in different devices in your account. The blueprints, for example, is another kind of resource we have for scaling up applications. Those require that you have sensors separated in different devices. Instead, you have all the sensors in one device only. And for that, we do have tutorial in our community, how to split up data from one device to multiple devices. This tutorial will cover how do you create a network so you have better control about the devices that you'll be creating for MQTT integrations. It will cover connectors so you can have, for example, completely different sensors being parsed in different ways. And it will provide you the analysis to split the devices each time your gateway or, for example, Node-RED published to Tago. So this analysis will do this work. And you actually will need to understand this analysis because in some cases, we did a very generic analysis here on how the data will arrive to Tago. And you need to understand how you are sending data, where is the serial of your sensor that identify that your sensor is unique, so you can get this information on the analysis. And at the end, you have the action trigger, and you will be able to just have this analysis in your account, and you don't need to do anything else. Just create your devices, and automatically the sensors, the MQTT will publish to the correct devices in your account. But this is a very good tutorial. I do recommend if you are experiencing a problem where you are not able to have different MQTT connections for each one of your sensors. And I do believe someone will ask, but I will answer first about Node-RED. We are developing a tutorial on Node-RED. Currently, I only have this response on community, how to integrate Node-RED MQTT to Tago. The basic concept is that you need to build a message like this one. This is just an example. You can do, as you see in this webinar until now, that you can send anything you want. You just need to be parsing correctly with the payload parser. But this is an example for CSV, for example. And you need to create the connection here. Select a topic, you don't need to be this one. You can use any topic you want. If you create the action for the topic you are using, and use the split up device analysis to split your devices. But we do have a very good tutorial coming from Node-RED with all this information step by step. Okay, Thiago, do you have Q&A now? Any question?
Thank you, Vitor, for the great presentation. We don't have any questions until now. I'm gonna give everybody a couple of minutes to answer questions here in the Q&A. I see that Paul Davidson raised his hand. Do you wanna type a question here in the Q&A, Paul, for us? Meanwhile, I just like to let everybody know that we have 2 other webinars coming. One is for IoT Platform 101. If you want to know, just have an overview of the platform. And another webinar coming right after that, using blueprint dashboards to scale up IoT applications. All right, let's see if we have anything here in the Q&A. Just going to give a few seconds. Okay, Fabio Leto. For every topic, I need to create one action to get different variables.
Not actually. You only need different actions if you want to have different type of actions here. Like I want a topic to push a notification, another topic to insert to device. But if you want all the topics to insert to device, you can just add the more topics in here. So you can have data 1, data 2, 3, 4, 5. And you actually can have some, I don't know if this is your case, but you can have wildcards. So for example, I have data, I can enter a plus here, and I say temperature. So this means we can use a topic, publish to a topic like this. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. For example, this could be my device serial, and I send temperature. So this is what the wildcard means. Just using your question to provide more useful information.
Fabio, I hope that answers your question. I have a question from Paul Davidson. What levels of SSL/TLS do you support?
Good question. Let's check if I have this in documentation. But I do believe we do support 1.2. I need to check this later, but it's 1.2. I am sure we support this level, but I do not remember if we do support V3 or other protocol for TDS and SSL.
Thank you, Paul, for your question. I have another question from Fabio. The question at the dashboard, here only a payload variable and get all the topics at the same time in the graph. Did you get that one, Victor?
Sorry?
Can you elaborate a little better, Fabio? I think just so we can get it clear with Victor. Okay, so he created a graph and it's only displaying the variable payload. And when he selects different topics in the action, it sends data from all the topics at the same time.
Weird. Not sure if I understand the question. So if you send data to Tago, for example, let me connect here, like that way, for example, 12 for my part temperature topic. So let's create this situation here. So what you actually end up, let me disable the payload parser, sorry. So that situation will always give you the variable payload and with the value being anything you send. And the topic is actually on the bottom here. So usually you don't want this to happen if you are, for example, using the topic for your variable. If you are just sending other ways. This is why I mentioned that the payload parser in the beginning, because we don't know what you are doing with your MQTT. So very hard for us to try to understand what you want to mean with sending temperature for topic, for example, and 12 for value. The default way that Tago accepts data is what I showed you before. That is by sending, let me get something here, variable and value. So if you send that way, you don't need to care about payload parser. This will always work. And actually you don't want to send value as a string because it will not work with some widgets. So if it's a number, send as a number. That is just removing these quotation marks. So if you send like this, you will have your temperature. But if for some reason, and it happens very often, you cannot do that, or for example, if you are using a gateway or some network server that do not give you control over this, you want to use payload parser to fix that problem for you. So when I publish this, if I go to Live Inspector, I'll have payload with 12. On my payload parser, I can load this one for hexadecimal just to have something to start. And my MQTT payload is actually this information here. So we can assume I just use comments here to give better understanding. So my MQTT payload at this point contains this information. So it's a JSON. If you don't know what is a JSON, I do recommend to watch some videos on that. Very easy to understand. It's just parameter key and parameter value. So you always have key and value, and you access the key by calling the variable dot value. For example, if I want the parameter value, or a variable if I want the variable. So if this is your case, what we actually want to do is to convert the temperature to the value. So how we do that? I can use this example here for data. I will remove the buffer because it's not a buffer. We are sending raw value. I can get my MQTT payload dot metadata dot MQTT topic. And for value, I can just get my MQTT payload dot value. And I can just remove anything else, everything else that we are not using. So at this point, my MQTT payload is exactly what I see on the Live Inspector, exactly this. And I'm creating a new object, data, with variable MQTT payload, metadata MQTT topic. So I'm getting exactly this topic as a variable. And I'm getting the value directly from the data I sent, that is value 12. So I will erase this so I can have a better view, and I can press save. And now let's see if it worked. When I publish, I now have temperature 12 and my payload here just for debugging. So you need to use a payload parser to decode the information you are sending. And as you saw here, it's not a hard thing to do. You can just take any of the examples, delete what you don't want, and at the end have this data information containing exactly what you want to insert to your device. And this in-depth guide to payload parser, I believe is all you need. We also have a webinar for payload parsers if you want to take a look. You will have contain all the information if you are not familiar on how this works. And in the same webinar for payload parser, we also talk about creating your connectors. So connectors is just a better way to have your payload parser for several devices in your account. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Victor. I'll follow up with Fabio on that question. Paul, I got your observation on the SSL and TLS levels. I'm going to follow up on the documentation to see if we have that. If not, add it with more specific details on there. Victor, I got another question for you from Yui Zimmerman. Do you accept Eclipse Sparkplug payload standard?
I'm not familiar with this kind of payload standard, but usually if it's JavaScript, it will work, but you need to make sure you are changing your payload variable, because it does not matter what you enter here as a code. It can be any JavaScript code. You can do anything you hope to do, but at the end is the content of this payload variable that will be inserted to your bucket. So I can change anything here. I can do calculations, but if I do not change the payload parameter, setting payload parameter, so this last line here is just concatenating this array with the payload array. So if I do not do something like this, it will not work.
Very well.
We do have very good examples with TTN decoders. TTN decoders works pretty well here, but we always need to add this payload equals the result from the TTN decoder, so it works on Tago.
Thank you, Victor, for your answer. We don't have any answers until this last question. Thank you, Fabio. It's working there. Very good. That's what we need. And I think that'll be all for today, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. I would like to thank Victor for the presentation and answering all your questions. And stay tuned to the next webinars.